Okay, you can begin, Jen.
All right, thank you, John. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're from. I'm really excited to be here with Chad, One Village Partners Program Director. And we're excited to share about what our model is for One Village Partners today. So to dive right in, to just give a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today, we'll talk about One Village Partners as a community-led development organization, a little bit about our model and programs, some of the results that we're starting to see, and some of the things that we're excited about moving forward, and then hopefully we'll have time to answer some of your questions as well. So when you look at this picture, a lot of people there's a lot of areas where an intervention can first start. Some organizations might start by looking at an area like feeding the child or giving the woman a loan to help out with her agricultural yields or rebuilding the houses. But as we all know, being part of a community-led development organization, this is only just one small part and does not take into account the entire picture. So in order to do a holistic approach and tackle the whole situation for long-term sustainable change, the community needs to be at the center of the work to demonstrate how change should happen. So like many community-led development organizations, One Village Partners, we start with the community. So we start with conversations and create a platform for the community to come together and assess their own needs. Currently, OVP is working in 16 villages in rural Sierra Leone, and we believe that if we encourage and inspire people to become leaders of development in their community, provide the right level of support and guidance, the community can tackle their own development and meet their own needs. So this is One Village Partners model. It is a multi-year, multi-project relationship with the community, and we have two programs. The first program is the Community Action Program that trains local volunteers to assess needs, design solutions, implement projects, and monitor their impact. One Village Partners then supports with guidance and funding for the project. At the center of this is their Nurturing Opportunities for Women's program, or Women's Empowerment program, that focuses on financial literacy training for women using an innovative picture-based curriculum that helps women plan, budget, track savings, and achieve their own financial goals. This is also unique that it works holistically with the entire family, understanding that training only goes part way. So our focus on both of these programs is not just on the project itself, but the idea that the whole community has a vision that unites this community. And this division helps define individual projects that the community will work on together to achieve that common goal. And through these goals, we believe that we get to increase gender equity, greater social cohesion, inclusive leadership, and all of this supports long-term resiliency that the community can meet future needs of well-being later on. So I'm going to hand it over now to Chad to go into a little bit more detail about our programs.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to start by just breaking down the Community Action Program and some of the process that we engage in when we work with communities. So first, we define the problem. We intensively train our volunteers in facilitation skills and tools from participatory rural appraisal to assess the needs in participation with the community. So we do this by holding several community meetings, and in this process we map their village, discuss the community vision that Jen referred to, and identify the community needs. Then the community comes together and votes to prioritize the need that that project will address. So then we move on to design. Using an adaptive form of human-centered design, once the priority need has been identified by the community, volunteers then spend 6 weeks intensively researching the need in the community. They discover innovative solutions to the core problem they are addressing from within and outside their community. Then they start brainstorming local discussions with us, prototyping, and finally budgeting and planning implementation, as well as the necessary education and project sensitization. They engage the community at regular intervals throughout this for wider community feedback and endorsement. And then we move on to the nuts and bolts, I guess, of the whole thing. Hear and implement we start by piloting. The community comes together to implement the project. Skilled labor is involved, but this doesn't, and the skilled labor is also from this local community, but that's not the only contribution that the community makes. The whole community is involved, either through collection of local resources or financial support of their skilled workers or other forms of buy-in. And some communities choose different levels of buy-in based on the particular needs of each household. So while some households will give money, some households will give food, so on and so forth. We work very closely and intensively alongside chiefs and other local authorities, and they are a big help in mobilizing the community support throughout the building process. And then meanwhile, all our volunteers are ensuring that the project work goes forward, but they're also continuing house-to-house education, as well as general public meetings about whatever the priority need is. As you can see here, this is the community is implementing the latrine project, and alongside of this would be regular sanitation and hygiene education. So then we move in to the final phase of our community action program and in this, this part is about our monitoring and our evaluation and our adaptation and refinement of our process. In here, we train the volunteers to monitor the project once it's been fully implemented. And we do this using a picture-based methodology so that non-literate volunteers can also participate. OVP and the volunteers come up with the targets and indicators together, and then they present that back to the community. Once the surveys are completed by the local volunteers and we analyze the results, we share this data back with the community in full. And this helps in a number of ways because it shows a connection between the surveys and the questions that have been asked in the weeks and months beforehand, but it also helps us identify the areas that the community could improve on. For example, where is there higher instances of reported hand washing, where is it lower? How can we meet these children at that level? The volunteers continue to tailor and refine the education based on these results. So now I want to talk about our Women's Empowerment Program, Nurturing Opportunities for Women. Nurturing Opportunities for Women is a 7-month, 26-session financial literacy training for women. In this as well, we use an innovative counting methodology so women are able to track finances, select a financial goal, budget for that goal, and do so even if they have no numeracy or literacy. So like I said, many of the women in the NOW program are non-literate and up to this point haven't been able to effectively track their expenses. Many of the women in our area track how much money they are spending by the color of the money, but not necessarily larger contributions or budgets. Some have not even held a pencil before, so this takes time to practice as well. The goal of this program is to help women control their finances better and make better decisions about their finances. In the traditional local culture here in Sierra Leone, in the Mende people, men make all of the household decisions, especially around finances. That's why in the program, we make sure husbands play an equal role. Women in the NOW program assess their own confidence throughout the program in order to help them gain confidence in public speaking, making plans, and advising their husbands on finances. And not only do they keep track of this information in their own workbooks, but we share our findings back to the group of participants, and they take the information and come up with ways that they can support each other better, making sure that everyone can achieve their own financial goals.
Great, thanks, Chad. So getting into a little bit more of the higher level stuff, through these two programs and the variety of skills that are learned by the participants in the community, we start to see a new sense of gender equity. In the Nurturing Opportunities for Women program, like what Chad was saying, we invite husbands to sessions to share learnings and to help foster better collaboration on financial decision making. And in these sessions, we hold exercises that help participants and their husbands see beyond gender norms, and so that husbands see the benefit of supporting their wives in the financial decision-making process. During the design process with the Community Action Program, the volunteers end up gaining new perspective on gender roles in their community. For example, one of our communities that was working on a hygiene project, the group highlighted the importance of clean cooking spaces and started to educate the community on the importance of equality, supporting and sharing duties within the kitchen between men and women. From there, moving on, we also see a greater sense of social cohesion within the communities. A lot of times what comes up a lot in these communities is they're talking about social cohesion following the projects. We see specific improvements in well-being thanks to our project-specific outcomes, but villagers are also telling us that working together as one has made the community more united. Following the first and second project cycles, regular community members are now stepping up to take on leadership roles within their communities outside of One Village Partners and becoming leaders in their own rights. So I just wanted to give you a few highlights of a few of the leaders that we are seeing in our communities. First, we have Mattia Braima, who is a very active volunteer in her village, and she has established herself as such a fundamental leader in her village that she was elected to be a Ward Development Committee member, which is a local government body that reports on village development needs to other funding bodies. We have Mohammed Kroma, helps his community to implement latrines that would be more child-friendly and encourages their use. Outside of One Village Partners, he's become a leader of a youth group that regularly meets to take action on improvements in their community, improving roads and paths to farms, or replacing walls around the water wells, and he continues to educate the village on other hygienic behaviors. Fatia Dugba has been able to put the training from the Nurturing Opportunities for Women program into practice in her own business. She's been able to save sufficiently and make some strategic investment. She is the only business in all of One Village Partners operational village to sell cold drinks and has a fridge and a generator that she uses with the savings that she obtained. So in the end, we believe that all of this will lead to a resilient and thriving community. We have noticed that leadership, social cohesion, gender equity manifests itself not just in our projects, but also outside of One Village Partners supported projects. When communities are united in a vision and a purpose, these things start to happen organically. We have seen youth mend relationships with authorities and start their own projects to fix roads. Nurturing Opportunity for Women's participants have come together to start their own farming businesses, and communities have mobilized themselves to build a bridge or a school. So, to talk a little bit about some of our results that we are seeing so far.
Yeah, hi. So, like all organizations, we track the specific project output. So I'd like to share some of what we've noticed over years of doing this work. Right now, 95% of community assets remain functioning up to this day. So this means the projects that we have implemented, they are still active over the last few years. And we think our approach has a lot to do with that. We have increased latrine access from 31% to 97% for over 13,000 people. We have increased access to potable water to 100% for over 1,700 people. In the first year of us implementing the Nurturing Opportunities for Women program, 85% of the women were able to meet their first financial goal. Most of the women had as a financial goal ensuring that their children had enough tuition for school. We're also seeing, like we mentioned before, many community members taking leadership roles that didn't have leadership roles before. The most exciting is the 68% of women that are reporting increased participation in public gathering, sometimes even leading the meetings themselves. So, what community-led development is really about being iterative. It's about working alongside a community and responding to their particular needs and their particular culture. So a lot of what Jen and I do in Sierra Leone is ensuring that we're always learning and adapting. So here is some of the things that we're getting excited about now and some of the new dimensions of our work. So right now, every single piece of information that we get from the community, whether it's through the baseline surveys that we do before we start our work there, whether it's through the project monitoring or the specific house-to-house surveys or the women, with the women responses as well, we share this back. And we do so in a manner that's very understandable for those who may not understand a pie chart, for example. So we are constantly looking at new ways that we can share information that's impactful to local community members. We also, like we mentioned before, we train our volunteers to monitor the projects, and we train them to do so in both kind of observational, but also using house-to-house surveys. And to do this, we created a monitoring workbook that is entirely picture-based so that all our volunteers can collect and understand the information that's being analyzed. Because we use pictures, there's no one who feels left out, or there's none of the volunteers who have to take up more of the work than the others. Everyone has a chance to participate in this monitoring. And then these pictures are then used to help share the information back with the community, like I talked about before. And then, like we had mentioned before, we use that data to help refine our ongoing education process in the community. Another thing we're really excited about is most significant change. So in most significant change, we collect qualitative data to find out both positive and negative impacts from our projects. And we have implemented this in almost every community we partner with. So most significant change is a very participatory evaluation methodology. So any and all members of the community can come in and share their own results. And through this process, community members tell us, you can see some of the impact that is coming along. Big impact in financial literacy, big impact in capacity of leaders. So the way most significant change happens is the feedback from the community is developed into, the feedback is given in kind of like a headline form. And that's developed into a story with the support of our OVP staff. The stories are then analyzed and we pull out the information like you can see here. And it helps us measure some of these higher level things like degrees of gender equity, social cohesion, inclusive leadership, and of course, overall resiliency. So here are some of the headlines that we have seen coming out of community members that are participating with OVP. So Robert Bati says, partnership with OVP has led to sustainable health impacts on my family. And so this is the kind of like the direct impact of some of our sanitation and hygiene and health projects. It's great when we see this direct impact, but we also see kind of a broader view of our work as well. A lot of community members understand that doing community-led development is different. So here we have Hawa Bokari, who says, this is the new wave to community development. Now, Hawa is a woman who volunteers with us in the community action programs, but she has seen several other development projects come to her community and fail, often because they did not include community voices in decision making. So it's encouraging to see that local people are understanding how impactful different forms of development can be.
And also, we are starting to look forward for our project as well, and we're in the process of defining an intentional, proactive exit strategy. We want to be able to achieve maximum impact, as well as also ensure that our communities are on an upward trajectory and that we will not create donor dependency. And that's why One Village Partners is working on defining an exit strategy for the communities. We are working on a few different criteria that we think will mean that a community is ready for an exit. One of them is demonstrated outcomes on social cohesion, gender equity, leadership, and resiliency, which really leads to our theory of change. We want to make sure priority needs are met, which we will be measuring through some sort of a poverty assessment tool. And we're also looking at whether or not community has demonstrated some sort of independence. One of the reasons why we're really focusing on our exit strategy is that communities, as we all know at their core, have all the assets, skills, and knowledge that they need to thrive. And One Village Partners is just a tool communities use to ignite these existing resources to reach their own vision of greater well-being for all. We think if all communities continue to thrive once One Village Partners is gone, that is the ultimate measure of success for our model. So we're really looking forward to seeing how this goes. So then we go on to our theory of change. This is our long-term goal, thriving communities. Not only are basic needs met, but the community is still talking and carrying on the conversation to create new visions for themselves and to make plans for them to achieve further down the road. All right, and that brings us to the end of the presentation. So I would like to encourage anyone who has any questions.
This is Michelle Linkley from Millennium Challenge Corporation. I have a question. You talked about using human-centered design in the initial phase, the socialization phase. That's not what you call it, but anyway. I'm curious to know a little bit more about how you use human-centered design and how long that process takes.
Sure, I'll answer that. So initially, we used human-centered design kind of as though it was being implemented in a workshop in the States. We used like a curriculum, but we quickly realized that it wasn't effective or appropriate. So what we've taken a lot of the basics from human-centered design, a focus on creating a fundamental problem statement, to focus on the user, which is very effective in our work, and also the work in terms of like prototyping and adapting it through there. So what we've kind of done is we've expanded on certain areas that we've seen that the community really responds to. For example, we spend a lot more time doing research, both locally, looking at the positive deviants in the community, the ones who are doing something different in a healthy behavioral way, and then also looking at other examples from abroad of how they might address this fundamental problem. To be honest with you, this is like we said, a constant iterative process. So we're still learning and adapting, how we can best implement human-centered design, but keeping it thoroughly participatory at all times.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we
how long we do it for. We hold 14 sessions. In each workshop is about 2 to 3 hours if it gets really exciting there. And we do so over the course of about 6 weeks.
Okay, awesome. We're about to engage in some human-centered design in Freetown, so maybe we can talk further.
Yeah, that'd be great. Really, really interesting.
Any other questions? Well, listen,
one question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks for the great presentation. I was curious, what was your method or process to develop the monitoring workbook for the volunteers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, what we started to do is we wanted the communities to really measure their own success of the project since they were implementing it. And we started off initially doing some sort of a very basic household survey, and we found out very quickly that because many of our community members are illiterate, it didn't go over very well. The households were a little bit timid about giving information because they weren't sure what it was for, and our volunteers were also having a really hard time collecting that information. And so we wanted to make it usable by the community. It was really, the monitoring itself was not for One Village partners. In general, it was for the community to see their own success. So we developed the picture-based workbook so that they were able to see what they were collecting and share it with others who might not be illiterate, who may not understand what was going on.
Great. Other questions? Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for this. I actually have about 20 questions, so I'll just send you an email with them because this is, this is a lot of your techniques, beg all kinds of questions like how long for this and how long for that, and what are you thinking about this or that? But I just really, really appreciate your preparing the presentation. And let me pause one more time to see if anyone else has any questions. Okay, if not, I'm going to I'm going to stop this recording. Let's see if I can figure out how to do